Our resident lawyer, Despina Priala from boutique law firm Priala Legal in Runaway Bay, with us every Thursday to get through a whole multitude of your questions and bring her legal expertise by providing some general advice on the latest hot topics. She has experience that spans more than 25 years in the area of property and commercial law. With us once again this Thursday morning. Hello, Despina.
Good morning, Wayne. Good morning, Brooke.
Good morning, Despina. So this topic is semi about COVID. We're back at it, but they're very important. We had lovely Greg send in a message to the show, and it's in regards to the Australian Immunisation Register. So Despina, what was it that Greg wanted to know?
Yes, so thank you, Greg, for listening to the show and sending in your question. And we always like to try and answer questions from people who reach out to us, which is great. And this is why we love the show, to give people information and up-to-date information about changes in the law and to give them that knowledge and power to make these informed decisions for their daily lives. So this is just another example. And the question that Greg asked was in relation to a form called an IM017. And this form allows people to basically opt out of having their information shared. And this is information that is placed on the Australian Immunisation Register. So we're going to talk about that a little bit to explain to listeners what this means and what this form is all about. So if we go back a little bit, we have the Australian Immunisation Register, and there has been mandatory reporting this year of vaccinations to the AIR, to the Australian Immunisation Register, and this commenced in February this year. But most recently, there's been another change as of the 1st of July, where vaccination providers are now required to report to the AIR all national immunisation programs and vaccines given under that program. And obviously this will include the COVID-19 vaccine. So knowing that this register exists and knowing that vaccination providers, so we're talking about GPs, other healthcare providers, where you would get your vaccine from. So there is mandatory reporting that is placed upon these providers to report vaccination status to the Australian Immunisation Register. So that does exist, and it has been in existence for a while. So the question that Greg posed, and I'm not entirely sure in the question that Greg has as to who he was referring to, but we'll try and answer it. And the question was, does the form where you can opt out of having information shared from that register to various people, does the form stop them from asking to see your vaccination status? So we'll do our best to answer that question, and I think we'll be able to when we go through a few other bits and pieces about this form. So first of all, we've got the AIR that I mentioned, and we've got this mandatory reporting by vaccination providers. So you can't stop your vaccination provider by providing information about your own vaccination status to be reported to the AIR. So that's the first thing to be very clear about. You can't stop that. That is mandatory reporting on all vaccination providers. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the first thing. But the second part to that is once the information is uploaded and it is on the AIR, on the register, this form is about changing or stopping various people from viewing that information. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's the part two that we want to talk about, and that's the question from Greg. Does this form, which is the IM017, stop them? I'm not sure who he was referring to, but we'll go through that in a minute. Does it stop them from viewing or seeing your vaccination status? So this form, it's when you download it, it is a Medicare form for the Australian government, and it is a cease correspondence and release of information form. So if you fill this form out, what you're doing is that you're opting out of having your vaccination status and information shared or being viewed by other people. So obviously it's on the register, as I said. You can't change that. But then it's about other people being able to view your vaccination status. So if you fill this out, it means that other people then can't view what's on that register for you.
Sure. And when you say other people, Despina, so is this anyone, I guess, in that government area or workers in an office that could bring that up and have a look? Is that the people we're talking about?
Your employer, for example, or perhaps even going into a store.
Well, what we're talking primarily is about third parties such as GPs and healthcare providers. So not everyone can access your vaccination status on your register. So I wouldn't be able to access your personal information on the register, for example. We're talking about people that ordinarily would and can currently on a daily basis view your information on that register, such as GPs and other healthcare providers. We're talking about those third parties that ordinarily, without filling this form out, would be able to view your vaccination status. So as to why someone would want to opt out of sharing that information or prohibiting those third parties from viewing it, not entirely sure. Maybe some people have particular views about their private information being viewed by those third parties, and that's a personal decision. And if that is the case, they can fill this form out and they can send it to the government, and that will be in place. Yes.
Yeah. And Greg's question there, he did word it as saying asked. He did say if someone asks. Is that correct?
Does this form stop them from asking to see your vaccination status? So if you went to a GP or another healthcare provider and they were trying to access your information or asked you, okay, so can you tell me about your vaccination status? So it's up to you how you want to answer that question. Obviously, you'd want to answer it honestly and not mislead anybody, because I believe there would be fines or penalties in relation to acting dishonestly and answering those particular questions. But what you can say is that, look, I've actually filled out a form, an IM017, and your doctors would be aware of what that form is or should be. And I've actually decided to opt out of having my information being shared or being viewed by third parties like yourself. For example, that's what you would say. And you're perfectly entitled to do that if you want to do that.
Yeah, sure. And this is not just COVID-19 vaccination we're talking about. This is all vaccinations that this form applies to?
So that's what I found out when I looked through this. And again, going through particular websites, you're jumping from one page to another and going through different hyperlinks to find the information.
Classic.
As per usual. But yes, once I did do that, it does apply to all vaccines you've ever had in your lifetime. So it's not a matter of you choosing to opt out of only the COVID-19 vaccination information for yourself. If you fill this form out, it will actually apply to all vaccines you've ever had. So if you fill it and it's in the system, it means that your GP or other healthcare provider will not be able to view any vaccines you've ever had in your lifetime. So you need to understand that if you're going to go ahead and fill this form out.
Yeah, sure. And if people want more information on this form or maybe want to apply, where can they go?
It's a bit of a mouthful, but I'll give you a couple of websites, because there's one section that talks about how they deal with your private information under the Privacy Act, and then there's just the general, the website about the form. So the website that has the form is servicesausstralia.gov.au/organisations/professionals/forms/IM07. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but maybe if you Google IM017 form, you might be able to find it easily. So that's that website. And then if you're wondering what happens to your information under the Privacy Act, there's a separate website that talks about that, and that is health.gov.au. And it's /privacy-policy-AIR. So hopefully that's answered Greg's question, and he's happy with that answer.
All right. Thank you for that, Despina. Now, just briefly on a similar sort of subject, Senator Pauline Hanson has introduced a bill into Parliament, into federal Parliament, called the COVID-19 Vaccination Status Prevention of Discrimination Bill. So she's a little worried about what governments are doing and how they're possibly discriminating against people who have not had the vaccination.
That's right. So it's important to mention first up very quickly that this is a bill that is not law. It is not law. It is not in place. What it is it's a bill that's been introduced by Senator Pauline Hanson, who represents the One Nation Party, and it's there for discussion and debate only by Parliament at this stage. So it is not law. It's up for discussion and debate, and that's how laws are made. A bill is introduced, it's discussed and debated, and then whether it's passed or not passed through Parliament and the various processes. But yes, it is a bill with that big mouthful that you called it, the COVID-19 Vaccination Status Prevention of Discrimination Bill. And what it's trying to do, and I've read the bill, it's only 15 pages, is it says in here it's trying to prohibit Commonwealth, state and territories and other governments and non-government entities from discriminating on the basis of whether a person has or has not had the COVID-19 vaccine and whether they have evidence of that. So it's an interesting bill that I've read. I'm not sure if it's going to actually get up and get passed, because I dare say it would be in contrast and contradiction to the current health orders in place under the Public Health Act. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But yes, that's currently out there for debate and discussion.
Coming up next, we'll be discussing something other than COVID. We're going to talk about property, the key things to look out for when choosing a conveyancing firm to represent you. More on Talking Law coming up just after this.